So, hey, Barbara.
Hey, Seth.
Um, when did we first meet? We've known each other a long time.
I came to the Barrow Group in 1991.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
And you, Tom Reese Farrell was a resident company member for us then. Is that how you found out
That's
about
how
us?
that's how I found out about you. I was standing by for Christine Baranski in this Jules Feiffer play called Elliot Loves that Mike Nichols was directing.
Yeah.
And Tom was standing by. I think he was standing by for Oliver Platt, but
Oh,
I'm
that's
not
right.
positive. I think that was who he was standing by for. And then on matinee days, we would gather at this guy, Brian Markinson's apartment down on Fifth Avenue, and we would run the show.
Just for fun?
No, like we were told to get together during matinees, because when you're a standby, you just have to phone in, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to show up at the theater.
Yeah.
So then when it was matinees, though, we were told to meet and run the show.
Wow. Just on your own.
Yeah. Or
Crazy.
maybe we decided to do it on our own. It's a long time ago. I'm not exactly sure. But at any rate, I remember we were sitting around in Brian's living room and Tom just started talking, acting, talking. And I was like, where are you from? And
Uh-huh.
how are you doing what you do? And he just said Seth Barish.
Well,
So then I went straight to the Barrow group and found you.
that's very sweet of Tom. And Tom actually, when we first started the Barrow Group in 1986, we formed a resident ensemble, and Tom was part of that original group. I first met Tom. I was studying with Uta Hagen, as was Tom, and I watched him, work in class, and I was like, that guy's really good. And so when we were starting, I invited him to be part of the group, and so, the rest is history.
Yeah.
Um, so
And I got to the Barra group and I had only been playing all these parts of these like forlorn, abused young girls who were always crying and getting kidnapped. And, just like I was really good at crying because I came from the method
yeah,
at Circle and Square. And I came to the Barrow group and I remember like just being so blown away by how 3D everything got, you
what do
know.
you mean by that? Like, what do
Well,
you mean by
like the
2D?
idea that, 2 weeks is not enough time to create a whole new character. So you start with yourself,
Hmm.
I start with myself. I ask myself, what is different about this character than me?
Hmm.
And then that's what I explore. But that basically it's me under a different set of circumstances.
Hmm. Yeah,
And in
right.
that, in that way, my work just like blossomed. And I started playing people who were laughing, like Sleepless in Seattle, and people
Well,
like
yeah, as I recall,
Nancy.
that the laugh was like a big thing in Sleepless in Seattle, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That
And
was
I
like,
I got that from you guys from the exercise of making a physical transformation,
oh, okay. Oh,
right?
so did you come? Was that in the script, or did you come up with that on your own, or what?
Well, when I met with Nora Ephron at the Apthorpe where she used to live, where she
Yeah,
lived,
yeah.
um, I laughed a lot and I did this with my hair in the audition.
Uh-huh.
And so that ended up being in the script that she laughs a lot and shakes her hair. They kind of took it to the nth degree, right? So I'm sitting in my hotel room in Seattle and I'm thinking, how can I make a physical transformation to make this laugh something unique? And there was a National Geographic special about hyenas
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that was on. And so I just started imitating the hyenas in my hotel room. And that's how I came up with the laugh.
That's so great. That
And it
is so
was so
great.
great because like you had taught me, if oh no, my teacher Jackie Brooks taught me this.
Yeah,
She said if you start laughing, like just go, ha!
yeah.
You'll make yourself laugh.
That's right.
So that's just what I did.
Yeah, wow, that's great. It's so funny because we're hearing the process behind the scenes, but for those out there who know this movie, that is an iconic behavioral thing. I mean, you're the other woman in that story, and it's that laugh that you hear and you kind of go like, oh, I don't know about that woman.
But you know what Tom Hanks said the nicest thing to me at the screening in LA? Like everybody was coming up to me saying, "Oh, you're so obnoxious and no wonder he didn't go out with you and everything." And Tom said, "No, it was because Victoria and his character were too much alike." Is that sweet?
That's very sweet.
That's
He's
sweet.
he's a notoriously nice guy, and isn't he?
Yes, he is.
He's really great.
Yeah.
Um, so, gosh, there's so many things we could talk about. I know that you had a conversation recently with the co-artistic director of the theater company, who coincidentally is my wife, Lee Brock, and you guys were talking about perfectionism. And
Yeah.
I think that it's a fascinating topic. And what were you guys talking about?
Well, I called her because I was having problems with perfectionism. And I was just, Lee always says at the end of every class, stay inspired.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm so grateful that I have auditions. I'm so grateful that I'm in your master class. I'm so grateful I have material to work on. I have time to work on it. But my perfectionism was getting in the way. And she said, it's not uncommon when you train as a dancer, as
Yeah,
your
which is
first,
your background, right?
which is my background, as your first art form, to have the idea that a performance is sort of a crystallized moment,
Mm-hmm.
or you strike a certain line when you're dancing, or you do a pirouette and it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That exists in the dance world.
Yeah, sure.
That doesn't really exist in acting.
Mm-hmm.
And what she was telling me was this. She told me this great story about her and her mother collecting Persian rugs,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that the Persian rugs are made by hand, but they're made so exquisitely and so perfectly that they actually have to weave into the rug a mistake,
That's right. Is that there's a deliberate mistake.
a deliberate mistake to prove that it's authentic.
That's right.
And this was like mind blowing to me,
Yeah.
because I was always thinking, well, if I run my scene enough times, or if I know my lines well enough, or if I practice this bit where I need to cry enough,
Yeah.
it's gonna stick, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
And the idea that you would welcome a mistake
Yeah.
was kind of foreign to me.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one of my favorite quotes came from one of my mentors, uh, is if it's wrong, it's right. And I think it's basically uh, suggesting that whatever happens that's what's happening. It's in the improv world they would call it yes anding, I suppose. But the idea is that that's what it is, and you're constantly following the path of whatever is happening, and whatever is happening, it's just impossible to plan it. Your brain is your brain. It just is doing its own thing. I mean, there's things that are happening unconsciously, and things that are happening in every performance that are a little different. Your acting partner does something a little different, or if you're in a film and television, the crew is doing something different, or if it's live, the theater, the audience is doing something different. And once you start to actually look for the difference that's happening all the time, it becomes a lot more fun and frankly a lot more real, I think, because the audience is not witnessing something that was just sort of put in a bottle for them. And it's like, oh, it doesn't matter whether I'm here or not, it's going to be the same. They get the sense that this is happening right here, right now.
Yeah, I mean, I likened it to my story, which was about a kindergarten teacher who has all these students who are finger painting.
Hmm.
And she says to the parent, they're all Monets as long as I know when to take them away, take the paintings away from them,
Right.
right? So
Yes.
I was always like looking for a great director who was going to take my picture away from me,
Yeah.
right? But then Lee was like, "No, directors don't have time to do that, Barbara. They don't have time to micromanage your performance.
Right.
You
Right.
know, they don't. They're not watching to see how you're painting it
Well,
necessarily."
that's a natural segue, Barbara. You have worked with uh, just some of the most, highest profile directors. I mean, I'm looking at your bio over here. Mike Nichols, Sidney Pollack, Todd Haynes, Nora Ephron, Dan Sullivan, John Caird, Ed Harris, Ang Lee, and I know many more past that. That's crazy. And so I guess my question is, I assume that your experience, like mine, is that there's wildly different styles, director to director. Is that how it's been for you?
Uh, no, I'm going to say those big directors all have one thing in common, and that
What's that?
is casting, casting, casting.
Yeah, yeah,
Once you're cast, you do your own thing.
yeah,
They like the only thing I worked with Mike Nichols 3 times. The only thing he ever said to me is go back to doing what you were doing before.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like he never gave me direction on what to do. And
yeah.
sort of as I got older and the directors got younger and less experienced, that's when I started running into trouble
Hmm. What kind of
because
trouble?
the kind of trouble of just what I was talking about, like giving my power over to them, sort of saying, like, okay, you're my eye, you're watching, I trust you. And then they would start, you know, fiddling with my performance, like, tinkering and sometimes actually, hammering away at.
Yeah.
And I didn't always know what voice to listen to.
And so, in terms of your own skills or techniques or whatever, and not even necessarily things you're consciously doing, but what's your sense of how you handle that when a director is particularly hands-on and saying do this and do that and everything? What do you do?
I usually try and please them, which is really terrible. But I usually figure, okay, they've got some real stylized version that they want. I'm going to try and give it to them.
Hmm.
And
Is
then
it?
at a certain point, your inner director that I've been developing in class all these years with you and Lee
Mhm.
sort of gets quieter and quieter, and you kind of are going for something outside of yourself,
Mhm.
that's been
Mhm.
created outside of yourself. And
Mhm.
it becomes almost like a Olympic event, like I'm gonna do the show again.
Yeah, right, right. It's really wild. It's funny because I think that when things are going uh, as well as can be uh, for me, and it seems like with my colleagues like yourself that when things are going really well, sometimes it seems as if we're almost like become like ducks. And what I mean is that the duck feathers, they have this oil so that the water, it kind of rolls off of them. And when things are going really well, if a director gives an adjustment, I just kind of go, yeah, yeah, sure. Um, but I'm not agonizing about like, am I doing it right? Am I just kind of hear it go, uh-huh. And
Yeah,
then
that's
trust
good.
my subconscious to kind of take it over.
Well, even last night in class, you gave me something to do, and I did it 120%.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. We talked about it just to bring the listeners and viewers in on that. So, and you're certainly not the only actor in
No,
the
I
world
know
that
I'm
does
not.
this. I'm somebody like this. You know, somebody gives an adjustment or throws a note, say, or and then as an actor, we hear it, and then we don't just do it. We really do it. We throw ourselves into, you know, and sometimes there's value in I've found anyway, there's value in recognizing that habit. In other words, if you're doing that, if you're taking anything and like doing it 100%, to kind of routinely hear the note and immediately tell yourself, yeah, maybe I'll do that. I don't know, like, so that you're kind of softening it so that you're not attaching to this result, that's out there. Um, but the interesting thing, Barbara, about that, I would say this is true from my knowledge of your work, is that the slightest awareness of that, if you're just even like, oh yeah, I'll just kind of sort of do it, you immediately can release the stuff.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I have years and years of Barrow group training, and so I
Well,
have.
and also, I mean, and also just to do full credit to you, it's, you are an incredibly facile and smart actor. And so when you hear that stuff, it's, because I think my sense is that even when we first met and I was either working with you or watching your work or whatever, that, you always took notes very well. Um,
Thank you, Seth.
and, but, and but it's funny, it's almost like it's just like giving yourself, and I don't know if this is true for you, I guess this is a question, is it, I think the question I'm asking is this: what is it that stops you from routinely, when you hear a note, routinely saying like, yeah, maybe I'll do that, I'll sort of, as opposed to like that 100% thing? What is it that gets in the way from just rolling with it more easily?
I think I think it's trusting myself. And also, after this conversation with Lee, I really started working differently, like not seeing you as, you know, the great teacher who has all the answers, or this director knows better than me, or like I really started thinking I have this deep, deep resource of an inner director
Yeah,
that I've been working on for years
yeah,
that can very quickly come up with stuff that's good. And then my job is to keep it fluid and loose and looser and more fluid, and not let it get, you know, uh,
set,
sorry,
not
set.
get like,
Yeah, not let it
right,
get set.
yeah.
So, so that's just something that's just changing after all these years now, just now.
Yeah, right. It's funny how I remember it's probably about 10 years ago now. I was on a set and I had that experience. I wonder if you've ever had this. I've started to have it more and more where I don't even hear them say action. Like I just get so in some kind of relaxed zone. I'm just like, oh, and when the first time it happened for me, I was like, oh my God, that took 25 years to happen. Like 25 years before I could get that relaxed.
Yeah.
And then immediately, like the next day, I was like, that wasn't happening again. I was like, oh, but I'm finding that the older I get, the more it's happening. I think it's because I don't care anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you said to me at the beginning of the pandemic when we were in class, you said, that's good. You're finally loosening up.
Oh no, I was
And I
joking.
was like, no, you weren't joking,
I was
because it was
joking.
true. And I was like, oh, I mean, loosening up is relative. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, I've been pretty loose for a long time, but I
yeah.
mean, like you said, you're finally loosening up. And I was like, yes.
I can't believe. I'm sure I was joking. Um, uh, wow. I'm sure you get this question a lot, but I'm imagining that we're having a lot of performing artists, of course, watching this conversation, and it's something that comes up a lot for me in classroom settings and everything, and so it might be good to talk about. For you, what's the difference between theater and film? And I'm not just asking like, which would you enjoy more and that stuff, but what are sort of, whoa, hang on 1 second, sorry. My phone just took over my computer.
You got to put
Turn
it
it
on
off my
do
phone.
not disturb.
There we go. I just turned it off. What are the differences for you between theater and film in terms of your process? Are there any, or is it how do you look at that stuff?
There didn't used to be a difference
Hmm.
for me. And I would do it different on stage every night,
Yeah.
like radically different.
Hmm.
And I started having actors and directors and lighting designers kind of complain a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I was not hitting my mark at the same time. I was not, say, lighting my cigarette at the same time. I was not looking at them at the same time right before it was their cue. And so I learned that I had to actually set a lot more of my performance on stage than I ever thought I was going to have to.
Hmm.
That was just the way that people worked.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I find that for theater, I do it is pretty much execution.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then there's always the issue of projection,
Hmm.
you know, breath support, relaxation. Um, so that's what's different for me about theater is that I do tend to feel it's a bit more like executing something.
Hmm.
And film, I still do it wildly different every time, but I don't like to do more than like 3 or 4 takes
Hmm.
because I just find it exhausting.
Hmm.
Like when I did Eight Men Out, that the scene on the stairs with John Cusack, I think we did it 19 times.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And my favorite medium is television
Because it moves
because
fast.
it's fast and
Hmm.
because you do one, maybe 2 takes.
Hmm. That's
And
that's
I think that's what I'm best suited to.
the thing you were describing in theater. Um, what comes up for me as you say that is that it's sort of learning. It's you know there's a structure, and it's sort of learning like which parts do you need to actually kind of lock in, and usually it's blocking and physical type of stuff, and which parts can you be wildly free. And I think that that's an ongoing dance. uh, I think I often think of spider webs because they have this beautiful structure, and yet the filaments, the actual structural parts, are very spare. And I think that ideally for us, that's where we arrive at, where we're able to do the things we need to do in order to get the job done that satisfies the production requirements, but we're also finding a tremendous amount of freedom within. It's an ongoing that's an ongoing dance, but it's interesting. I mean,
I think it depends
what
on the director you work with.
I was going to say, and I also think that the actors you work with too. I think some actors are you know more into a lot of wild play, and some actors are like you know um, I remember once I was doing a Law and Order as a tiny part. It was when I first, gosh, it was early on in my career, and I had some scene in a Rikers Island or something, and I think Tova Feldshuh was my lawyer, and and you know they had just been on me a lot shooting it, and I thought I was awful. I was so stiff, and so finally they were coming around for coverage on her. And I was thought, oh, finally I can, now the pressure's off. I'll actually can relax and start to do what more along the lines of what I think would constitute good acting. And the second I did that, she she looked at me, she goes, "Hey, performance kid." And I was like, oh, oh, you want me to do that other thing that I just did so badly?
Yeah,
Um,
I've had actors say that to me too. But like I was just thinking about this last show I did, the Great Society,
yeah,
and that was a show that was highly choreographed.
right,
Like
right,
physically, it was highly choreographed. Vocally,
Yeah.
pitch wise, it was highly choreographed.
Story
And,
theater, really. I mean, you guys are watching the play while it goes on and all that.
and it's history, it's people from history and all of that. But I remember one day we were doing a put in rehearsal, and I just screwing around, doing whatever I do. And at the end of it, Mark Kudish, who I greatly respect, came up to me and he said, "That was a good show."
Yeah,
And I was like, "Oh, fuck." Like,
yeah.
you know, I've missed the boat on this one.
Well, I think what to me what you're calling out is this is what I was saying about it. It's an ongoing dance. It's like, we constantly evolve, we constantly learn where when are we getting where are we over structuring?
Yeah.
Where are we over planning? And conversely, like when are we under planning? And to me it's like the maxim that I always go by is if it's physical it's fair. In other words, if somebody asks me to do something physically, or if I come up with a physical bit of business and I think, oh, I enjoy this is nice, um, I think I can repeat that, more or less anyway, at the same part, same line and everything, and I don't feel like it messes me up. I'm still thinking whatever, I'm still feeling whatever. The lines can come out, with some degree of variety, depending on the production, a wild degree of variety, or a little, depends. But I think that it's this constant discovery of like, what are the parts that help and what are the parts of structure? What are the parts that help and what are the parts that hurt? And
Yeah.
you kind of find it out.
I don't feel any of that pressure in television though.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't feel
Because
any of that pressure.
that's interesting. I'm with you on that. Although I think when I was younger, and I think I hear from a lot of actors who are newer to the medium, that they feel a tremendous amount of pressure. They seem, there's often a great concern like about continuity and what does that mean, and do I need to be identical with each take and everything. And one of the things I always feel like people misunderstand is that actually from the editing standpoint, it's fantastic when there's variety in your performance. It gives them different things to choose from.
Yeah.
You're just giving them ingredients in a way, and they're the chefs. They're gonna mix it up and do what they do with it. Have
And
you?
might have helped too that I taught film and television at the Barrow Group for a number of years too. So I was really able to understand continuity and what needs to be repeated and what doesn't need to be repeated.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's just it's fascinating. It's one of the things I really enjoy about art as an artist is that it's this constant evolution, as it never gets old in a way. As long as you're continually looking and looking for inspiration and expansion. That's really cool. At this point, I'm going to open it up for questions and answers, and if anybody has a question, they can throw it in the chat, um, and that's true for the Facebook world too, and those questions can be relayed to us, and Barbara can address them. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for that, um, I have a bunch more questions for you. You grew up in Canada, right?
In Toronto.
In Toronto, and did you when you began to work professionally as an actor, was it in Canada or here?
In Canada. Yeah, I
And
studied
was that prior to going?
sorry, Seth?
I'm sorry, you broke up for a second. Say that again.
I couldn't hear you.
The internet went screwy. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So, great. Did you work in Canada prior to going to Circle in the Square as a student?
Yes. I
Wow.
made a couple of Canadian films, and
Hmm.
I did a Canadian television show. I was a dancer at Canada's Wonderland. I was in a dance company from the time I was 16 till I was 19. So yeah, I
Wow.
started working early.
Wow. That's great. So so you actually came to the States with some experience, something under your belt, and then went to school.
Yeah,
What
I went
what
I went to school to be an actor to make money because I wanted to be a
Mhm,
dancer and I wasn't making any money as a dancer. So I
mhm.
thought, well, I'll subsidize my dance career with acting, which is weird.
Yeah,
But I went to, Circle in the Square, and I would run to ballet class when everybody went to the bar after class.
yeah.
And then eventually I fell in love with acting and I stopped dancing.
Wow.
Yeah.
J.R. Rich put in a question for us, uh, asking what your process for learning lines um, is when you don't have somebody to work with directly, on the project. How do you go about practicing your lines?
Well, Seth, that's a great question. Seth taught me that you take like the first letter of each word, like it says, "Hi Lee, I've been watching." So I put HLI''B''W and just put the first letters of each word right off the bat. So I'm not memorizing the words as they're written on the page, but
Yeah,
I'm learning the logic and the words just based on the first letter.
yeah.
And I record it. I record
Oh,
my
you record
cues.
it, really?
I record my cues only.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then I run it with my tape recorder, my
Yeah.
phone. And then if it's a really important audition, I coach with Seth. And if it's a really, really important audition, I get together with my friend Ron Peretti and we just drill lines.
Yeah, yeah. And that's funny. That particular technique with that's something I do sometimes. I had a student show me that, and the student said that she got it from the Royal Shakespeare Company. That was a technique and I have gotten in jams where I was like, man, the words are just not going in, and then I try that initial letter technique, and sometimes it really helps. Um, what do you do to avoid getting into line patterns? Do you make sure that you just kind of say things differently every time, or how do you do that?
Uh, this is going to sound weird, but because my background is in dance, I will like dance the scene and then I will like sing the scene.
Yeah,
Like I will just like mess it up in any way I can. And then when I know it quite well, I'll say it when I'm doing my dishes, I'll say it when I'm sweeping my floor, where the activity is primary and the way the words are coming out is secondary.
right. Yeah, I do similar things sometimes, especially if I feel like I'm locking in. I'll start doing really silly things just to kind of shake it up. Um, That's fascinating. Um, when you finished Circle in the Square, I don't. You probably remember this, but I actually met you before I met you in the context of the Bear Group because I had a friend in your class at Circle in the Square, Bruce Vieira,
Yes.
and I went and saw a couple of shows that your class did, and I was at the time I had graduated. I went to UCLA. I graduated UCLA in I think 81, and I feel like you must have graduated Circle and Square what 82 something like that.
84.
Oh, 84. No kidding. Wow. And I of course I saw your showcase. And then I remember they did this. Were you in the C plays?
No, I was working by that time.
Oh, okay. You had escaped.
I'd escaped.
That's so wild. But I knew so many people. There's actually a fair amount of people from that class went on to do really well. Um, Mike Rispoli,
Yes, Mike
a lot.
Rispoli. Yes.
And Joe Pacheco works a lot. He
Oh,
was
in
also
Chicago?
he works in LA a lot.
Oh, in LA. That's
Yeah,
great.
he's become like a film and TV guy.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's a small world. And so when I think a fun question also might be, what what stands out for you as the highlights of your professional career? What are the projects that you enjoyed most?
I think the project that sort of was the most synchronistic, where it was like the acting, the directing, the writing, the role, everything all came together, was Tales of the City 1993, which was
Hmm.
on American Playhouse and
Yeah,
is now on Netflix.
yeah,
Um, that project for me was a dream. It was just a dream come true because I was trying out all my new Barrow group technique and it was
yeah,
working.
yeah,
And I loved the director. He never said anything to me, which
yeah,
I loved.
yeah.
And the other actors, Laura Linney and Thomas Gibson. I mean, just some wonderful, wonderful actors.
Yeah. When you did
And
the reboot that has it aired yet?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It aired in 2019.
Oh, in 2019. How many people from the original cast were still there?
Not many. Me, Laura, Olympia.
Yeah, Olympia Dukakis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. JR has another question. How are you adjusting to acting class on Zoom?
I
And
love acting class on Zoom. I
can you
gotta
talk
tell
about
you,
that? What is
I
it you like
love
about
it.
it? What
I
do you
love
like?
it because I'm more relaxed than I've ever been because I'm just sitting in my apartment and I don't have like the stimuli of all these bodies in the room with me. It's
Yes.
just it's easier for me to stay grounded.
Yeah.
I also find it almost like a film master class,
Yeah.
like in terms of the mic being so hot that you don't have to speak up, and the the camera picking up every move,
Is there
and
anything
also
that's challenging about it?
when your scene is standing up or moving or has a lot of blocking, like last night, you were working on the Trigorin Arkadna scene
Yeah, yeah,
on the
yeah.
seagull, which Alex and I had done in class when we were in person.
Yeah.
And I was like, how are they going to do that on Zoom? But they did it,
They
and it
did.
was great.
It was great. They did so well. That was Martin Van Turen and Morgan.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, that was really wonderful. Yeah, it's funny. Like Zoom, when the whole pandemic hit and we were all of a sudden teaching in Zoom, I of course was really concerned about, what's this going to be like? And I found that it does have certain challenges, and meaning like things that are just different, but it also is like it has some gifts and along the lines of what you described. Um, and I didn't, I was always in the teaching capacity until I was hired for a reading of a play, and so all of a sudden I was acting in a Zoom format, and I know what you mean about like not, you don't feel any pressure about like people in the room. It's like I'm really alone. Like this is truly private. Like if
And
I'm
also,
asking you, here we are, even in this conversation right now. I see you. I don't know if you can see me, uh,
yeah,
and and there are other people here we know, but really this could be just between the two of us.
yeah. And also, all my auditions now are on Zoom.
Yeah,
So I'm learning, about uh, eye lines, uh, coming, putting my script up on the screen and using it if I need to, and um, vocal, how much you have to project and how much you don't have to project, and
yeah,
I'm just learning so much, and it's, hopefully I'll get a job soon, based on all this great new Zoom technique I have.
There was a, did you do that show? I know Steven Singer did this. Are you there? There was a project, maybe you auditioned for, but there's a project where that's coming out that's in Canada that's all Zoom, right? Is
I don't
it?
know if it's in Canada. I think it's Michelle and Michael. What are their names? They did the Good Fight.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The same writers
Hmm.
of the Good Fight.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that's all on, like, my character. I auditioned for Taylor Schilling's mother,
Hmm.
and I only appeared on Zoom in Zoom calls with her.
Yeah. Wow.
So you can, like, shoot it from your own home.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a new thing. I'm involved right now in the development of a wildlife uh, television project. That same thing. It's geared for people to be able to participate from home.
That's
Uh,
great.
it's wild. Well, I told you this was the case, Barbara, but we are at the end of our time. And what I mean is, I told you, I told Barbara, I said, this goes by so fast, it'll be over before you know it. And that was a lickety split 45, but there is one question that just came in under the wire. So
Okay.
can you stick around a tiny
Yeah,
little bit?
absolutely.
All right, so the question, this is from Scott Willits. How did you change your thought process or approach to your work as an actor after coming from dancing for so many years and with this idea of perfectionism that we were talking about? Like this whole notion of trying to hit the perfect turn and then the line and everything. And Scott's asking because he's a professional dancer for 24 years, and he's encountering this very thing. And um, what's the deal?
Well, I think the deal is to realize that acting is a much vaster uh, art form in terms of acceptance. And like Seth was saying, there is no right, there is no wrong. It's not like ballet, where if you don't hit that arabesque perfect, it's wrong. There is no right, there is no wrong. And I think really um, trying to always say to myself, um, good is good enough, because good is better than, like, perfection. Perfect is the, how does that go? Perfect is the enemy of good.
Mm-hmm.
So just saying I'm striving to be good is a big one.
Yeah.
Also realizing you probably have it a lot earlier than you think you do. You don't have to, practice 500 times to get it. You've probably arrived at a level of looseness and spontaneity quite easily.
Yeah.
It's probably easier than you think.
It's funny, the dancers I know that have been able to, and there's quite a few of them that have been able to release and let go, often are just fantastic actors. There's this sort of there's a certain level of discipline and attention and detail that they're bringing to the forum, as dancers. That is, if it's managed right, it's just wonderful. There's so many people. I'm thinking of all these people in the Barrow group. We had in our original company, we had a woman, Erica Goodman, who was prima ballerina for Joffrey Ballet, and she was fantastic. She was just so mercurial and everything. Jenny Eakes, who and
Yeah.
uh, so
You
many
tell
people.
that Erica story though about repeating the lines, because that's what made me want to talk to Lee.
Well, that story is that we were when we first started, Lanford Wilson asked if we would do a production of Three Sisters that he had translated. And at the time, it had been done at Equity Library Theater, but it had not been done for the public at large. And they did later on, they did a version of it that somebody else did at the roundabout that was unfortunately, it didn't go so well. But prior to that, we ended up doing a production of it. And Erica Goodman, who, as I mentioned, was prima ballerina for Joffrey Ballet, um, played Olga. And the first line of that translation, if, as I recall, is "Father died a year ago today." And Erica, who was brilliant, Erica, every time we would read anything, the first read, Erica was way ahead of the pack. She was just like, oh my God, who is that person? She's so good, so fast. How does she do that? And then as rehearsals went on, you would watch her, and if if it got the best of her, she would really start to obsess and fixate on things. And for some reason, she got obsessed with the first moment of that play. And you would just see her, like, every time she'd just be like in the dressing room, she was just going, Father died. Like, she was like just trying the line in all these different ways. And there's one time where we were walking on 45th Street, where Lee and I lived on 45th Street, and we stepped out and we started to walk towards 9th Avenue. So we lived closer to 8th Avenue, which was a long block. And as we're walking, we're looking down the street, and all the way down the block, we see Erica Goodman walking towards us, talking to herself. And I turned to Lee and I said, she's practicing her first line. And Lee's like, no, she's really? And I went, oh yeah, she's definitely practicing first line. And she got closer and closer and closer. And then we could tell that she was doing just that. She was like talking to herself like, no. So Lee kind of snuck up on her and went, Father died a year ago today. And she hadn't seen it. She like completely freaked out. And she was like, how did you know? And it's like, well, we kind of knew.
No, but I mean, the great thing about that story is that it just encapsulates how obsessed you can become with getting something perfect, and how you can ruin it for yourself and for everybody else if you don't learn to let go.
That's right. And I have to say, I mean, Erica's passed on now, and I feel odd saying anything about her performance, but since we're talking about, we can talk about the mechanics for a second. Erica was brilliant always. That said, somehow never as brilliant as her first read. It's almost like her rehearsal process was backwards. Like, she would start like exactly where you would hope to land as an actor, where it's so alive and vibrant and spontaneous and smart and everything. And then as time went on, it became, really good. And that was just a matter of her overworking. And it was hard for her to release that, just because of her work ethic, which was so.
Yeah. Well, I've had directors say to me, why can't you do what you did in the audition?
Right.
And I'm like, well, because I'm working on it. I'm starting at the audition and I'm working on it.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we hired what you did in the audition.
Yeah.
Take it easy.
Take it easy. Funny. And of course, people are on both sides of that, because I think there's people that sometimes under prepare in some ways. But again, as I was saying before, it's all about finding the kind of preparation that's productive and the kind that kind of messes you up and locks you in and all that stuff. Anyway, Barbara, thank you a zillion times for talking with me here. It's you're such a valued member of not only this community of my life, we go back a long way. So I love you, and for everybody, if you're interested in any of this programming, you can always look online at barrowgroup.org, and you'll see what we've got going on. We have auxiliary programming like these conversations, and of course we also have ongoing workshops and classes and all that stuff. So check that out, barrowgroup.org. And everybody stay safe, and mask up, and be well, and we'll see you when we see you. And stay inspired. Yeah, look for inspiration. All righty. See you, everybody.